Welcome to your deep dive, all about understanding type 2 diabetes. You know we've gone through all the articles and research that you sent in, and we're going to try to break down the important stuff, especially what you need to know. You know we're going to find those aha moments. And it'll be a lot more interesting than you just reading the headlines yourself. And joining us today is our expert, who can explain not just the what, but the why of all this.
Oh, it's great to be here. I'm really excited about diving into this research, especially some of the latest stuff that you sent in.
So let's just jump right in. I think everyone's heard of type 2 diabetes. But, before we get into the details, I think it's important to go back to the basics. And I know if you are concerned about your family history of diabetes, you might be wondering, how is type 2 different than type 1?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's important to understand the difference. So type 1 diabetes, your immune system is actually attacking the cells in your pancreas that make insulin. And so without insulin, your body can't use glucose for energy. Now, type 2 is a little more complex. It's kind of like a traffic controller that's gone haywire. So insulin is like the traffic controller. That directs glucose from your bloodstream into your cells for energy. But in type 2 diabetes, either your body's cells become resistant to insulin's signals, or your pancreas just can't make enough insulin to keep up with demand.
So it's not a simple on-off switch then. It's more like this gradual decline in your body's ability to manage glucose. And I think that's where those sneaky symptoms come in, the ones that maybe we miss for years.
Exactly. And that's why early detection is so important. A lot of people don't even realize they have type 2 diabetes until complications come up. So let's talk about some of those warning signs. Have you been feeling more thirsty lately or needing to pee more often?
Well, that's hitting a little close to home. I've been blaming it on all the coffee I drink. But now I'm wondering...
Yeah, it could be. Could be your body trying to flush out excess sugar in your blood. Fatigue is another common symptom. If your cells aren't getting the energy they need from glucose, you're going to feel tired even after a good night's sleep.
Okay, so those are kind of the classic signs. But the research that you provided mentioned some less obvious symptoms. Things like blurred vision, slow healing wounds, even tingling in the hands and feet. What's the connection there?
Well, that's the scary part. It all ties back to nerve damage. Prolonged high blood sugar can damage the nerves throughout your body. Think of your nerves like electrical wires carrying signals. High blood sugar is kind of like corrosion, disrupting those signals. And that can lead to all those seemingly unrelated symptoms.
So it's not just your blood sugar, it's like the ripple effect it has on your whole system.
Exactly. And that's why understanding the root causes is so important. So genetics definitely plays a role. If you have a family history of type 2 diabetes, your risk is naturally higher. Age is another factor. As we get older, the risk increases.
Okay, so some things are beyond our control, but I'm sure you're going to tell me that lifestyle choices play a role too.
Absolutely. And this is where it gets empowering. Because even if you have a genetic predisposition, lifestyle choices can really tip the scales. In fact, the research you shared highlighted a study that found even individuals with high genetic risk could lower their chances of developing type 2 diabetes just by adopting healthy habits.
Wow, so it's not a predetermined fate. That's reassuring to know. Let's talk about those healthy habits, especially diet. I know the standard advice is to cut back on sugar, but what's the science behind that? And are there other dietary villains we need to be aware of?
Well, instead of just cutting carbs entirely, I think it's important to focus on the quality of those carbohydrates, processed foods, sugary drinks, refined grains. These all cause rapid spikes in blood sugar, which overwhelms your system and contributes to insulin resistance.
That makes sense. So it's not just avoiding the dessert aisle. It's about making smarter choices throughout the day.
Exactly. Now, before we move on to diagnosis, there's one more thing I wanted to address. It seems like, based on the research that you provided, you're interested in the role of ethnicity and its connection to type 2 diabetes.
Yes. Definitely. It seems certain ethnicities are more prone to developing it.
That's true. And while the exact reasons are complex and still being studied, it's thought to be a combination of genetic predisposition, cultural dietary patterns, and socioeconomic factors. For example, studies have shown that individuals of South Asian descent tend to develop insulin resistance at lower levels of body fat compared to other ethnicities.
That is interesting and definitely something to be aware of. So let's say you start experiencing some of these symptoms or you're concerned about your risk factors. How do you actually get diagnosed?
Well, your doctor will likely recommend a blood test to measure your blood sugar levels.
Okay, let's break those down. I know there's the fasting blood sugar test, but what are the others? What makes them different? In considering what you've shared, which ones might be most relevant?
You're right. Beyond the fasting blood sugar, there's the oral glucose tolerance test, or OGTT. It measures your blood sugar after you drink a sugary solution. It gives a more dynamic picture of how your body handles glucose over time. Then there's the A1C test. That provides an average of your blood sugar levels over the past 2 to 3 months.
It's like a long-term report card.
Exactly. And
Right.
finally, we have the random blood sugar test, which can be done anytime, often used when someone's experiencing symptoms. Based on your family history, your doctor might recommend the A1C test to get broader picture of your blood sugar control over time.
That's helpful to know. But let's say you do get that diagnosis. What happens next? Is it a life sentence of medication and restrictions?
Not at all. That's a really important point to clarify. Type 2 diabetes is manageable, and in many cases, lifestyle changes can be incredibly effective, especially in the early stages.
That's good news. You know, I'm sensing a theme here. Knowledge is power. The more you understand about this condition, the more equipped you are to really take control of your health.
Absolutely. And in the next part, we're going to delve deeper into those empowering lifestyle changes. And we're going to focus on the areas that you seem most curious about. Based on the research that you provided, we're going to uncover this fascinating world of gut health and its connection to type 2 diabetes.
That's so interesting. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about some pretty serious stuff, the potential long-term effects of unmanaged type 2 diabetes. But now I want to switch gears and talk about something you have control over, and that's taking action. In the material you shared, there was a lot of focus on gut health and its connection to type 2 diabetes. I have to admit, that kind of surprised me at first. I always thought of diabetes as a blood sugar issue, not a gut issue.
Yeah, it's definitely a connection that's come to light in recent research. We used to think of our gut just in terms of digestion, but now we're understanding it has a much wider influence on our overall health, including metabolic health and type 2 diabetes risk. So break this down for me. What's the connection between all those trillions of bacteria in our gut and something as complex as blood sugar regulation?
Well, think of your gut microbiome like a bustling ecosystem. When it's balanced and thriving with beneficial bacteria, it helps regulate a lot of processes, including how your body responds to insulin. But when this balance is disrupted, things can start to go wrong. And the research you provided actually highlighted a study that found a link between something called gut dysbiosis and increased inflammation in the pancreas, which is the organ that's responsible for producing insulin.
Oh, wow. So that's a direct link I hadn't considered before. So gut health is about way more than just digestion. It's influencing our hormones and potentially even our risk of developing type 2 diabetes. That's pretty powerful.
Absolutely. And, if you dig even deeper into that research, we see that this imbalance in the gut bacteria can actually lead to the release of inflammatory molecules, like something called LPS. And these molecules can travel through your bloodstream and directly interfere with insulin signaling in your cells. So essentially, they make your cells less responsive to insulin's message to absorb glucose.
So it's like a communication breakdown at a cellular level, all because of what's happening in our gut. So that makes the idea of tending to our gut health even more important. What can we do to cultivate a healthy gut microbiome and boost those beneficial bacteria?
Well, you have a lot of control here, and it starts with what you eat, a diet that's rich in fiber-rich foods, like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes, acts as fuel for that beneficial bacteria in your gut.
So all those high-fiber foods we've always been told are good for us are actually feeding the good guys in our gut. I'm already feeling more motivated to eat my veggies.
That's great. And don't forget about fermented foods like yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, and kimchi. They contain probiotics, which are live beneficial bacteria that can actually help replenish and diversify your gut microbiome.
One of the articles you provided mentioned something called butyrate. What is that, and why is it so important when we talk about type 2 diabetes prevention?
So butyrate is a short-chain fatty acid that's produced by those beneficial bacteria in your gut when they ferment fiber. And it actually plays a critical role in maintaining a healthy gut lining, reducing inflammation, and even improving insulin sensitivity.
So it sounds like a superhero for gut health.
It kind of is. Butyrate helps strengthen the tight junctions in your gut lining, preventing something called leaky gut, which is a condition where undigested food particles and toxins can leak into your bloodstream, triggering inflammation throughout your body. And we already talked about the bad effects of inflammation on insulin signaling.
Wow, so a healthy gut, thanks to butyrate, is like a fortress protecting against inflammation and insulin resistance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's not just about what we eat. Our lifestyle choices also impact gut health. Chronic stress, for example, can really disrupt the delicate balance of bacteria in our gut.
Ugh, stress. I know it affects my mood. But I never realized it could be impacting my gut bacteria.
Right. When you're stressed, your body releases cortisol, which can throw off that gut microbiome balance, leading to inflammation and further contributing to insulin resistance.
So managing stress isn't just about feeling calmer, it's about protecting our gut health and ultimately our metabolic health.
Exactly. It's all interconnected.
Right.
And speaking of interconnectedness, there's another really fascinating area we need to discuss, the role of sleep and circadian rhythms and blood sugar regulation.
Well, that's one of the topics I was most curious about. I've heard that sleep deprivation can mess with your metabolism, but I never really understood the connection to diabetes.
Right. It's another example of how seemingly unrelated factors can have a big impact on your health.
Yeah.
And let's delve into that. Let's delve into that.
Okay, so I'm ready to get into this sleep connection. I've always been a night owl. But now I'm starting to wonder if those late nights are doing more harm than good. Is there really a strong connection between sleep and blood sugar control?
Well, the research that you sent in seems to suggest so.
Mm-hmm.
It turns out that sleep plays a way more active role in our metabolic health than we realize. When we're consistently not getting enough sleep, our body produces more of that stress hormone cortisol, which we talked about earlier.
Oh, right. So lack of sleep is like a double whammy, messing with both our gut and our blood sugar. But how does that actually work? What's the mechanism there?
So elevated cortisol levels, whether it's from stress or sleep deprivation, can actually make your cells more resistant to insulin signals. You can almost imagine insulin knocking on the door of your cells, trying to deliver that glucose. But cortisol is like a security guard blocking the entrance. That resistance means glucose can't get into the cells as easily, leading to those higher blood sugar levels.
So it's not just about feeling tired the next day. It's about those underlying hormonal shifts that are affecting our blood sugar control. Okay, that's making me rethink my sleep habits for sure. You know, I hadn't considered that connection before.
And it's not even just about the amount of sleep we get. Our circadian rhythm, which is that internal clock that regulates our sleep-wake cycle, also plays a big role.
I've heard about circadian rhythms, but I always thought that they just kind of dictated when we feel tired or alert. How do they factor into blood sugar and diabetes?
Well, our circadian rhythm actually influences the timing of a lot of hormone release, including insulin. When we disrupt our natural sleep patterns by staying up late or working night shifts, or even exposing ourselves to bright lights at night, it throws off that rhythm, and that can lead to a cascade of those metabolic disruptions, including insulin resistance.
So it's like our bodies are meant to operate on a schedule, and if we keep messing with that schedule, it can have consequences for our metabolic health.
Exactly. In fact, one of those studies that you shared found that individuals with consistently disrupted sleep patterns, like people who work rotating night shifts, had a much higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes, even after adjusting for other lifestyle factors.
Wow, okay, I'm convinced. So what can we do to get our sleep and those circadian rhythms back on track? I know you're going to say consistency is key, but I'm really looking for those practical tips.
You're right. Consistency is key. Try to establish a regular sleep schedule. Go to bed and wake up around the same time each day, even on weekends. This can really help regulate your circadian rhythm and improve the quality of your sleep. And just like we talked about, managing stress for good gut health. Creating a relaxing bedtime routine can really make a difference. Dim the lights, take a warm bath, read a book, anything that signals to your body it's time to wind down.
No more late night Netflix for me. You know, I'm starting to see how all of these pieces fit together. Gut health, sleep, stress management. They all contribute to this bigger picture of metabolic health.
Absolutely. It's really about making those small but consistent changes that can support your body's natural rhythms and create a good foundation for optimal health.
This deep dive has been amazing. We've learned that type 2 diabetes is complex, but it's not a life sentence. We have a lot more power than we think to influence our risk and manage our health through these lifestyle choices.
I agree. The research that you provided in our discussion today highlights just how interconnected our bodies really are. By taking a holistic approach, addressing our gut health, our sleep, stress, nutrition, we can create a ripple effect of positive change that goes way beyond blood sugar control.
That's a great takeaway. It's not about being perfect. It's about making those small changes consistently.
Exactly. Knowledge is power. The more you understand about your body, the more prepared you are to make choices that support your health and help prevent those chronic conditions like type 2 diabetes.
Well, thank you so much for guiding us through this deep dive. This information is really going to stick with me, and I'm sure with our listeners as well.
It's been a pleasure. Just remember, small changes can have big results, and it's never too late to start taking control of your health.
That is the perfect note to end on. To our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey into the fascinating world of type 2 diabetes. We hope you feel empowered to apply what you've learned and make choices that support your health and well-being. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep taking care of yourselves, the learners.